talking
Let's just
about
stick to
it.
this real quick. This one's a real easy one. So, you're okay, aren't you, in third grade teaching a romantic... Oops, my bad.
Can anyone else hear me?
My bad, that was my bad. So you're okay teaching a romantic story involving a heterosexual couple in third grade, yes, right?
Yeah, I think they do think. Yeah, that's
Okay.
That's normal.
Are you okay with a romantic story about a gay character in third grade?
You just say that's normal.
I think it can be mentioned, but I don't think it should be highlighted. I suppose.
Well, why didn't you say the same thing about the heterosexual couple?
Because I think heterosexual is more correct.
Oh, so I mean that.
That's
hilarious.
There you go. It's exactly what we thought, which is
that's the truth. It's obvious.
Isn't that
you're
homophobic?
showing more ass than Nicki Minaj?
Isn't it? Wouldn't you describe that as homophobia, Brento?
No, I wouldn't.
Why not?
Because heterosexual sex makes life, and that's its entire point. That's why it's important.
Okay, appeal to nature. Can we mark our bingo cards? Can we mark our bingo cards there? Appeal to nature.
Even if the homophobia were justified by your appeal to nature, it would be homophobia, right? It would
appeal to Pisco. You?
Well, I'm asking you why you're preferring a homosexual fictional relationship. Sorry, preferring a heterosexual fictional romantic relationship over a homosexual fictional romantic relationship.
Because
your answer was because
the fictional is
it's natural to be gay in nature.
But what about this?
Sure.
What if explicitly in the story they're not having sex and they're, for whatever reason, they can't reproduce? I mean, that wouldn't change anything.
But that's usually not in a children's story.
Like an elderly couple
they
can't
get
be in
a kid, blah blah blah, then they get a kid. Yeah.
I do have
no idea how this is relevant at all.
So if just to be clear, banning gay marriage.
I didn't say banning. No, banning gay marriage. What the fuck are you talking about?
This is a principle. This is a principle.
He's walking.
No, this is a principle.
Brento, let him walk.
Banning gay marriage wouldn't be homophobic, right?
Banning gay marriage.
Because the reason we're doing that is because it's more natural for heterosexual couples to marry.
Yeah, marriage is only for
it wouldn't be homophobic.
Gay people have the right to get married because they're adults, and adults have the right to marry someone.
But if someone were to ban it, it wouldn't be homophobic, right?
I think it might be homophobic.
Why? Because
if it depends why you did it. If you think that marriage between a man and a woman, that's like all that means. But ultimately, I think that gay people have the right to get married because they're both adults and they have the right to get married.
But I'm talking about is the rationale of your argument, and your argument is what you suggested about the different romantic stories wasn't homophobic because heterosexual relationships are more natural, and you more agree with them. That logic would apply to any homophobic, potentially like society would determine homophobic policy by the same rationale. And so I would say to you, you should just say it's homophobic, but for a good reason, because that's what it is.
Can I jump in real quick? I have something actually, believe it or not, relevant. Okay, this
can I ask Pisco a question? I'm sorry, but I'll end it here. Do you not think that heterosexual sex producing life is like the reason and the reason why we have male and female and center it in society? Do you think there's another reason for that?
Nobody's stopping that from happening.
I didn't. No one's asking you that. I'm asking Pisco that question.
Is heterosexual sex the reason for what?
For the orientation of male and female and its place and structure in society.
I think the male and female aspect of sexuality has originated for like literally millions of years. I don't know.
Right, billions.
Yeah, so I don't know that there's any quote unquote purpose about societal gender or anything. If it
doesn't that sound weird?
It predates society, right? That configuration predates
language. It's in all life across the planet, including human beings.
But you're implying
asexual reproduction erasure.
I was going to say billions of years ago we were just atoms splitting apart, like we weren't. Yeah.
Typically, someone would say something is homophobic. Your rationale about
please think of the amoebas.
Brento, your rationale about like we should prefer these relationships because they produce offspring, I don't agree with it. But supposing that were true, why don't you just say and admit that that's homophobia? You're discriminating against homosexual relationships.
Because I don't think homophobic
for a reason.
I don't think homosexual people are less as people, but I think homosexual sex doesn't produce life, and therefore it is not it's not doing the function of sex. Sex has a function.
Aren't you discriminating against homosexual relationships and teaching them? You're discriminating. You're treating them worse. You're treating fictional gay relationships.
No, you're giving preference to the one that produces
You're discriminating against sterile women.
Giving preference. Let's say I give preference to white people. Would you call it discrimination against other races, or would you call it giving preference to white people?
if you were actively discriminating against other people, then yes, that would be discrimination.
Well, no, I'm just giving white people all the money and the jobs. I'm not discriminating against anyone else. I'm just giving
white people are not the only thing that makes life.
No, I'm not. I'm asking you about your
the function.
Are you
drunk?
No.
No. Let me ask you this. Pisco.
Have you been drinking?
Pisco. Why do we not? Pisco. Why do we not feed people things like paper?
I'm gonna drink
because they're not. They don't
eating paper, right? So if you don't feed, someone wants to eat paper, and you don't give them paper, are you discriminating?
Against
you're not.
Yes. Wait. So if you make a rule like let's say this. If I make a rule that says only people who can see can drive, I am discriminated against the people who have no vision.
That is. Yep.
Yes or no,
true.
right? So if I'm
true. Yeah.
Okay. So if I'm, why don't you just embrace it and say, yeah, I'm discriminating against gay relationships in fictional stories as being taught to children in 3rd grade?
I guess because I don't feel like. I guess it's a good question. I'm trying to answer it.
More of a value to
heterosexual. The answer is you are being homophobic and you are being discriminatory, and like you could have a good reason for it, but that's what you're doing.
I guess I feel like preferencing the sexual relationship that makes life is not a bigotry.
So hold on, we gotta move on. Compound.
Oh joy. Yeah. So this is I've been on this list for quite a while. So again, we'll try to bring it back around. But like it seems like this entire time since I put up my hand, what we've been talking about fundamentally is what is true and who gets to decide it, right?
Yes.
Like that's when we really dive down. That's what it is. And we have mechanisms that we use in our society to decide it. Like there's a lot of organized people who all agree with each other, who all have their sources that say that climate change is fake, right? And hopefully we know that those people are wrong. There are people who say evolution is fake because God created the earth 6,000 years ago. Hopefully we know as a society, not as individuals. It's cool that they're wrong. They're allowed to be wrong. This is America. Well, it's Canada, but it's still, they're allowed to be wrong. But when we're talking about public education, it's very important that we have a shared mechanism to decide upon the shared truth that is going to be reflected through our public education system. That is super, super, super important. There's a lot of organized people who will tell you that slavery was okay or didn't happen. We cannot teach that in schools. We cannot teach that in schools for hopefully what is incredibly obvious reasons. Obvious reasons. But for some reason, when it comes to gender identity, that's not obvious. And I think I know the reason why. As recently as something like 15 years ago, transphobia was the absolute default in our society, the absolute unquestioned default. A trans person, especially a trans woman, could not find a job, like a regular minimum wage job, unless some really cool person decided to give them a chance. And that cool person, that manager who gave them a chance, would face constant criticism. Don't you know how unprofessional that is? Don't you know that they need to be excluded from our society? This was 15 years ago. So yeah, there's more people who are saying that, gender ideology or whatever you want to call it, which is basically the way our society understands gender to work, is what that is. It's what people are talking about when they say ideology. They mean our understanding as a society. There's more
That's
people.
Not what that means.
Okay, we'll get there. Can I get there?
Yeah,
let me wrap my way there. Okay, I'll speed through it.
No,
so
take your time. No, you've been waiting a long time, so take your time. You can get there.
Thank you so much, Prime. Okay, so that's why there are more objectors to this one than there are to other ones, because it's so recent, because that civil rights movement is started real recently, or took flight real recently. But the way that we come to understand these things as a society is that we have academic institutions. That's just that is how we do it. And there's reasons for this. Academic institutions have crazy requirements for you to be a part of them. You have to be very educated. You have to spend decades studying things. You have to go through a peer review process. And my God, if you think that like a debate panel is hard, peer review is merciless. Merciless on merciless on merciless. And we have these standards such that we can come to the best conclusion as a group, as a civilization, as a society, as to what is and is not true, so that I can point to Brento Box and say, you are wrong, according not to my standards, but to the standards that our society has set for how we collectively determine truth for things like public education, okay? This is very, very important because we don't have a different way of doing it. There are lots of people who believe a lot of bullshit and collectively believe bullshit, and they have sources. They have people they can point to and say, this guy believes what I do, and look, he has letters next to his name. But unless it has passed through that process that we determine truth collectively, it's still, to our collective understanding, wrong. Just like God created the earth 6,000 years ago was wrong. Just like flat earth is wrong, by the way. See, they are the same. They are the same. It's just one is less unaccepted than the other. That's the only real difference. Now, I wanted to talk very briefly about the difference between sex and gender, because this is a truth that seems to be causing a lot of problems within this panel. Like that the idea that sex and gender, that there aren't two things. Well, the thing is that those two concepts are related. One is built upon the back of the other. And I'd like to use an example to illustrate this. See, when we say that sex is biological and gender is a social construct, that does not mean that gender is arbitrary or that it doesn't exist or it's not real or anything like that. It just means that pretty well everything in our society has a root that we observe, and then it has the way that our society relates to it, which is built upon that root, okay? So I'm going to do another thing where I'm going to be a white guy and I'm going to relate this to race, okay? Because there's a similar dynamic at play there where there's ethnicity at the root, and ethnicity is like real diverse, really, really diverse. That's what our DNA says. That's the reason I get sunburned. That's ethnicity. It's not race. Race is something that our society has constructed on top of ethnicity that dictates things like social roles. It dictates how ethnicity relates to the way we treat each other and the way society sees us. And this comes out in all sorts of really weird ways. Like, for instance, we talk about Latino being a race, or Latino-Latina being a race within, like, when you report on a census and say, what race are you? But really, that's a mixture of a lot of different things, right? That's white people, Spaniards. That's indigenous people, which are a different race. Like, indigenous is a different race than Latino, but Latino can be it's real confusing. It includes black people, African people of African descent.
Sure.
And so these are okay. You told me to take my time. I used that.
Yeah, we got the example.
Okay. So, gender is like that to sex, where gender is all of the roles that we have assigned based upon the things that we observe about sex. Gender is the culmination of the way we dress, because there's nothing in my genes that says I should wear pants instead of a skirt. Like, there's nothing there. There's nothing that says I shouldn't have makeup on. That shit's gender. Gender is the roles. And sex is something that the roles are kind of built upon, but kind of not, right? These are distinct concepts. They are distinct concepts. They just are. If you say that they are not distinct concepts, or that they don't both exist, or that one isn't a social construct of the other, you are wrong. And we know you are wrong because people have written long papers about it that have been very peer-reviewed through the academic community, through the whole method our society does to determine truth. That is how we do it. And one thing I don't agree with, I think science is important when it comes to civil rights, because science ultimately allows us to understand the ways in which the civil inequities arise, such that we know what we're fighting against and we know what we're supporting. Yeah, anyway, there's my rant.
It shouldn't be fully defining.
Let's go.
I agree with you. I agree with you. I was just,
Let's I know. Let's quickly hit cricket, then we'll jump to Naz, and then anyone else.
Yeah, Brento, I was hearing you say earlier that that you're against the teaching of gender ideology, but I just want to say, like, you kind of do have your own gender ideology as well, and I'm sure you probably aren't used to thinking of your own point of view as that on that as an ideology.
Well, no,
but if you're against
this. Go ahead.
Sorry, what's that?
Go ahead. Apologies. I'm aware, but go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, if you're against the whole concept of teaching gender ideology in school, would you also be against them teaching your point of view on gender?
No, because he's playing his shell game. He doesn't really care. He just wants his own view.
No, I think that it's okay to teach that gender is linked to biological sex. I think that's the truth.
Okay, so then you're not actually against the teaching of gender ideology, then only some versions of gender ideology.
Well, I think gender is ultimately just an empty category on purpose. I think it's a category that's left undefined so that it can hold anything.
Okay, that's the content of your gender ideology.
Yeah. No, that's the content. That's gender ideology. That's like what gender ideology says.
That's your gender ideology.
No, that's what gender ideology is. That's what it is.
Your gender ideology.
Are you a gender abolitionist, Brento?
No, I'm not.
Oh, okay.
He's
I
kind of
gender
traditionalist or something. Sorry.
It's an empty concept.
Sorry,
Yes.
Cricket.
It's meaningless.
No, that's okay. I got what I wanted out of that exchange.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Let's go to Naz then.
All right, Fracture, you were talking about the academia, right? You were talking about how these institutions are flawless, and that.
No, not that they're flawless. No.
Okay, so that's actually going to my point. So, all of this time where the scientific consensus was that man and woman is binary, right? All that time that it had that ideology had to be peer reviewed, okay?
Sure.
And wasn't challenged. You're saying just now,
Well, it was challenged,
recently,
but it was consensus.
it's been legitimized. You're saying this ideology now recently has been established in academia as the commonly agreed upon fact in science, that it's all a spectrum, right? You would agree that the older fashioned way of thinking in your eyes, it's old fashioned to say that man and woman is binary, right?
Yes, that has been overturned. Yes, that has been conclusively overturned.
That's not the old-fashioned way of thinking.
Changed, or the science that validated that idea changed? Do you think the institutions changed, or the actual?
No, I mean we've always had like intersex people, for example.
Science and academia evolve. We base our education systems on the current understanding as we know it. Things evolve, you know. When the scientific consensus was different, the schools taught different things than they do today, and that makes sense because scientific conclusions evolve. It's not a
also trans people aren't a recent invention, gentlemen.
Nobody's saying flawless. That's only you.
Go ahead, Naz.
Okay, so this idea that gender is a spectrum and that everyone's gender fluid, do you think that's a positive thing for the advancement of the human race, or a negative thing overall?
I don't think you understand what gender fluid means. I might be wrong about that, but I don't think you do.
Okay, blurring the lines between what a real man is and what a real woman is.
That's not what it means, no.
No, I'm restating what I'm saying. Okay.
Oh, okay. Oh, I see. Thank you.
So the blurring of the lines between man and woman, that idea, do you think that's a good thing for the advancement of the human race, or a bad thing?
I'm saying it's good that we recognize people as they are, and some people are non-binary. Yes.
We've
not
been
everybody.
doing it
I'm
since
not
200
non-binary.
BC.
I don't think you are either, but yeah.
Okay. So why is it that kids in school need to be taught this by their teachers, not by their parents?
The same thing I said earlier. It's about allowing children to accept themselves and to accept their peers. That's
also,
what
you're understating the law
so
once
if
again.
Someone's going through an identity crisis or something.
The law is not.
Let them go, Naz, please.
It's up to the teacher to explain to them what's actually going on in their mind. Is that it? Is that what we're gonna do? We're gonna just push
it's up.
responsibility completely away from their parents, their conservative, evil parents, right? And just give it all to the teachers.
The teacher is one of many influences a child has on their life, and the way the teacher influences the child is supposed to be based on our common understanding of facts. And so the teacher has that role in our society. They are one of many influences in a child's life, and they serve a very important influence to counter what can happen when a parent has shitty, bigoted ideas, regardless of what they are.
I have to have this be said, Prime, because every time you understate or make too narrow the scope of this law by implication through your questioning, you're doing a disservice to your own arguments and to what Governor DeSantis and the Republicans are trying to do, which is it's not just limited to teaching explicit gender theory class. It's not limited to teaching that gender is a spectrum as a kind of actual thing that people should accept. It's any conversation, discussions about those subjects which could include things as even like love stories between two gay characters, not just also trans characters or things related to gender. It's also sexual orientation, and it applies, as we've already stated numerous times, further than just third grade.
No, we haven't said that. You've just insinuated that.
By you limiting the scope of the
the law says that.
The law is applying. The law is applying.
It does, you fucking idiot.
No, does it apply to sexual orientation? Does it apply to gay people or not? Or to
does it apply to gay people?
Sorry, gay conversations about sexuality.
It applies to all conversations about sexuality.
Okay, so it applies not only to trans-related issues, correct?
True.
Okay, and as we discussed,
kindergarten through third grade. As
we discussed numerous times, and it's like for the last hour, it applies further than third grade, right?
You are assuming that it will.
Well, no, it does by its own terms.
Fucking don't know how to read
by its own terms.
No, it says
we can have the conversation.
When it gets
held accountable.
When it gets to older ages.
There's a different standard when it gets to older ages, but there is a standard.
And the standard is vague.
There is a standard, correct? So there is.
What is the standard? Tell me what the standard is then. What is the standard that you have a problem with?
The standard is age appropriate.
The parent finds it objectionable.
Isn't the standard age appropriate or something to that effect? Okay.
That's right, something like
and so isn't
something
that
age content appropriate?
That law is doing something, right? It's not doing nothing, right?
True.
Okay, so by virtue of the law doing something, it is limiting and not expanding the amount of conversations that can be had about sexual orientation and gender issues, correct? It's limiting them. Okay.
Yes.
So then shut up about this only applying to third graders.
Unlimited conversations? Do you want no?
No, but you're lying when you say you're lying when you say it only applies to third graders and below. You're lying. It applies.
It's in the VC chat.
No, it applies specifically to that.
It's in the text chat. I copied it straight out of the law text and put it in the VC chat with the highlighted portions. The or operator is important. Operators in law, punctuation in law, things like that are very important to define what something is saying. That's
all of us know what you're trying to do here. You're using children as in a guise to try to say that, well, we're just trying to protect the children. But what you really want are some of these more substantive positions that Brento and also that Nasty are presenting, which is this theory about binary sex. You can see it by the questions. Don't you think it's positive that the binary wasn't that the more positive interpretation?
It is
what
more
do you
positive.
Okay, so that's what you guys really care about. And when you present the children as, oh, we have to protect them, that's just a lie, because the law applies much broader than that. And in fact, it gives a private right of action.
That's
apparently.
not true.
What do you mean it's not true? What do you mean it's
fine.
not true?
There's no problem with having a standard for this type of thing. And it's not defined as narrowly for when they're older, and that's fine.
But you yourself stated that the age-appropriate range for some of these doctrines is limitless because you don't think it should be taught at all. And so if you were enforcing the law, you would apply it in a very restrictive way. And my question to the audience and any sane person is, who do you think is likely to apply this law? Someone like Stardust or me or Dr. K or Prime, or someone like Brento or Governor DeSantis? Who do you think's in charge of enforcing this law?
I didn't say I would apply it in a very restrictive
someone more
way. That's
conservative
the thing
than
you added.
Brento.
That's where you keep trying to take it, and that's not what I said.
The people who are going to enforce this law are going to be state actors who are Republican, or people who want to sue teachers for this law, which aren't going to be supporters of this law, who want a better interpretation. They're going to be people who want to sue the balls out of a teacher, who are in agreement with the law, and who are essentially probably Christian fundamentalists.
So that's what you say is going to happen.
Oh, that's
assuming it's going to happen, right?
Bro,
the law specifically enables
it's going to
happen.
happen.
What they want.
Have you ever had a teacher in school who didn't like you for, it just seemed like they really had it out for you?
Yeah.
So do you think that maybe, there could be some repercussions in this situation when you have a teacher who maybe really just particularly doesn't like a kid, right? And maybe they don't have, evidence of a full evidence of this kid doing anything bad, right? But maybe this kid's just a little bit different, right?
Okay, sure, go on.
Do you think that this law could be or just this ability to just disclose suspicions to a parent could maybe be abused?
Yes, anyone could abuse something like that. It could be abused even if there wasn't a law. I mean, this
How many
law to
teachers
disclose
did you
things.
go through K through 12
You're saying it could
that
somebody
had
use
it
it as an
out for you?
excuse? K through 12?
None.
only one, but we got to know each other later, and it was fine. But I mean, you're just saying like, could
teacher's
could
gonna
an
risk
abusive
prison time
teacher
for this
abuse
Hold on.
a law and this one specifically? And
The
the
law
answer is
applies
yes.
against teachers, not in
Hold on.
Yeah.
Sawdust, finish your point. Then I want to go to Relevant Thought. I want to go to Gothcash. I think there's something you wanted to say.
I may be
Dr. K,
I may
and
be
then
comprehending. I may be comprehending this law weird, and also it's very late for me. But from what I can tell is that this law you have to disclose to parents if there's something that for example that is different about sexuality or gender identity, right? And I just feel like if a teacher really doesn't like somebody, that there could be a possibility, like I don't know if you've ever had a teacher who's tried to get you into trouble before, but there could be a possibility of somebody abusing that.
Let's go to Redolent Thought.
Yeah, okay. I didn't do the channels, write it down mantra. Sorry, I had to like leave and come back. But something, Brento Box, earlier you said something. You did the thing, man. You literally said like, I'm not this, but I give more value to this. I think you used. I'm going to paraphrase it. You were. No.
It was like, I'm not homophobic, but
I'm not homophobic, but I give more value to people who are
heterosexual.
actually like producing more children.
Yes.
Like, yeah. Like, do you not see how those two things contradict each other? You're giving
That's what sex is for. That's what sex does.
Okay, all right. Is that?
Do you
what
not
it's
know
for?
that?
Okay.
Like, is that weird
Cool.
to you? Is
I'm
that a strange thing to hear?
Jeez,
I'm a
every time I've
40-year-old
used a
virgin.
condom, I'm doing it wrong? Holy crap.
I have no
Kind of,
idea.
yeah. That's what the condom's for. The condom
Do you think
makes
a
it not
homosexual
happen.
relationship is more valuable than a homosexual relationship?
Exist in different realities.
So you think a heterosexual relationship is more valuable than a homosexual relationship? Is that right?
Relationship,
Well, you guys
hold
are
on,
not.
hold
You
on,
guys
hold
have
on,
to
hold on.
understand.
This
You
is-
guys
this is
are
literally-
completely different.
Hold on. Redolent Thought's been
I
waiting
literally, I
forever.
literally just wanted to point out with a very simple, like this and this, like the hypocrisy of Brento Box's shitty position of I'm not homophobic, but I give way more value to not
To a relationship that makes life. Yeah,
because
it's more important.
blah 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 blah. So
Yeah, that's true.
So like I don't know, test tube kids and all that kind of stuff, science fiction, cyberpunk shit. Like doesn't
What about that?
doesn't
you
the
appealing
future
to science fiction?
dissolve your? I'm trying to like get away from your like mythic past.
How about
bullshit
surrogate
takes.
parents?
That's what I'm trying to do.
Absurdity
I'm
of your
trying to get away
position
from
is
your
this.
mythic
This is the absurdity of
past
your position, Brento.
garbage
Ready?
takes.
Ready? Do you value a heterosexual relationship that is fertile more than a heterosexual relationship that is not fertile?
Yeah.
So basically, you value always the relationship that is most able to produce children.
The being able to produce children is a good.
Real quick, can I just jump back in real quick on this? So can we talk about the homosexual relationship that does not produce children, with all that disposable income, providing more money for the economy? How do you feel about that there, Brento? What's up?
That's fine. That's great.
No, the only thing you value in a relationship is how much kids you can produce.
I didn't say that. You were just trying to say that because you don't want to understand my argument.
How about the amount of kids you can care for?
understand
Is
your
that
argument. Your
equal
argument
to the
Well,
value
you
of a
might. So
relationship?
Pisco just
You
trying
guys
to
are getting
strawman
caught
me.
up
Pisco's
on
only
things
interested in one thing.
that aren't the law.
So,
Yeah.
let's go to Gothgash.
Thank you for listening to my TED Talk.
I think we've derailed again into like one-on-ones with Brento, so I'll dodge a lot of that. What I want to say is like the law, again, as I said earlier, is super vague, and I think that the thing that we all seem to be caught up on is the kind of reactionary, like knee-jerk reaction to it, right? Of like, how bad is this or how good is this, and why is that going to apply? When I think the thing is that we are realizing like DeSantis is not somebody I would accuse of doing a lot of science. So I think that's something to bear in mind. So maybe that deference to authority is not the right deference to authority. I think that could be a little bit silly. Also, when someone mentioned that, science is ever changing and there's some recency bias or some bullshit, I don't know. I think that like that's one of those things like I get, if something's new, it's scary. And if something's new to you in any way, shape, or form, it can be a little bit terrifying. It's and I'm not saying that to be slighting anyone. I get it. If you're exposed to people of different walks of life, it can be intimidating. It can be just foreign to you. That's not bad. No, that's I think it's a normal reaction. So I think it takes like a little bit of exposure. So my point that I wanted to bring up that I think is like why science keeps changing is that science is not looking for the end of a problem. It's not looking for like here's the end of everything. Like here's the final equation. Here's the final everything. It's looking to find more and more of an answer or to perfect an answer to keep working on a hypothesis. And so I wanted to get a little biblical here because I do think it's relevant. Okay, so I pulled up the right Bible quote because I think this matters because people quoted this in the 60s. Okay, this is if everyone's got their Bible, they're reading at home. It's Genesis chapter 1. Okay, verse 7. God made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament, and it was so. So basically, God made a wall in the sky to keep the water in the sky separate from the water on the earth. Now that is obscenely stupid, okay? That's dumb. People said this in the 60s about the rocket launches and sending people to the moon, and they said there's no way they will get through the firmament. People believed that. They will get up there and they will hit the wall and explode, or they will hit the water and drown in the sky. And we listen to that and think that is an absurd thing to think. That was 80 years ago. There's people still alive that may have actually thought that type of shit. So I don't want to hear, well, the science back in the 60s said X, Y, Z. It's obscene. It's such a stupid argument. It doesn't mean anything. If I can point out some like really ridiculous Bible quote like that and tell you there were people alive that were espousing it, there were preachers. There were out pushing this. There was a prominent Mormon preacher. I can't remember the name off the top of my head because it's late and I don't give a shit enough to look into it. And it went around saying that like they were on a mission to hell because of it. They were trying to escape Earth, and that man was earthbound. Okay, we find most everybody finds that just kind of silly, right? Like it seems stupid. So I don't want to hear like, oh well, this is new science. We can't change our view on anything. And again, I never hear any of these people say like, well, here is the counter evidence. Here are the counter academic reviews. It just never comes up. So whenever you have that evidence, I would love to see it, and I'd love to see it that's not from some conservative like religious think tank. But it just never happens. I never see it from any universities.
Dr. K, flow trace cricket.
One thing.
Oh, sorry. Did I skip you and ask? I don't remember. Did I skip you? If you're talking to us, I don't know. I don't think. Okay, I guess not. Then, all right, let's go.
Okay, one thing I really want to emphasize, right, is that being transgender is not this like new thing that magically appeared like 30 years ago, that a lot of people seem to be making it out to be, and that it has consistently existed throughout all of history. The first evidence we have of it is from 3000 BC in Egypt, and we have it appearing, trans experiences and such, in nearly every culture, in nearly every period of history. And like even my own gender identity of femme and yellow, like we have documented examples from as back as the 1500s. So like this idea that this is a new gender ideology, right, that's being pushed as some sort of population control or great replacement kind of thing is absolutely batshit. This is simply an extension of a population that has always existed and is now seeking formal legal recognition. If you want to know more about trans history, let me know. DM me. I can tell you all you want.
Hey, I want to be clear real quick. When I said that this is a new thing, I didn't mean it in such terms.
No, I'm not calling out you. I'm calling out people who were saying that shit earlier.
I mean, it's new to a lot of people, right? A lot of people are finding out about this for the first time. That's what I meant.
Yeah, that's valid.